What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we turn financial peace to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today we have an amazing guest coming on. Her name is Imani. I mean, her story is super great. I think a lot of people will be able to relate. She did grow up with some financial literacy, but of course, even with all of the knowledge she had as a child about finances, she still ended up making some mistakes in her financial journey up to this point. She is a part of the younger generation like ourselves, and she's still trying to learn her way through. So I really hope you guys do enjoy this podcast episode. I hope you guys get a lot of information. She brings up a lot of good books recommendations that I'll be linking to the show notes. And all of her content, of course, I'll be linking in the show notes below. But I don't want to ruin her story, guys. So let's go ahead and get into Imani's interview. Hey, Imani, welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing amazing. So I ended up finding you on Instagram. You put out some kind of comical, entertaining, like reels and stuff like that on Instagram about, investing and just a whole bunch of good stuff. So I really wanted to reach out and bring you onto the podcast to hear your story and, get your perspective on your journey and how it went.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. How was money talked about as you grew up?
Yeah. So when I was growing up, money was actually talked about a decent amount in my household. I didn't learn everything that I know today growing up, but I think I knew enough to get by right after graduating from college and getting into the real world. Like for instance, I remember my mom talking about investing in the stock market and how her stocks were up, and she was really excited. And money was talked about in other ways as well. Like I remember my mom having like little side hustles here and there where she would sell like little dog toys and dog clothes, and they were really cute. And I remember her explaining to me that it takes money to make money. Like if you want to make more money and have it grow, you have to put some kind of initial investment into it. But then I vividly remembered those kind of conversations stopping right after or right around when 2008 hit. So I kind of always carry that memory of like, yeah, I think I understand there's benefits for investing, but it carries some risk with it as well. So my adulthood was spent trying to figure out how to, or I guess figuring out how if investing was worth the risk, which obviously I know it's worth the risk now.
Mhm.
But, with that being said, I was very fortunate enough to grow up in sort of an entrepreneurial mindset type of household, which is why I think I view looking at financial security of some sort being so important. So money obviously doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy security and time.
Gotcha. So you mentioned a couple things. So it sounds like at least your mother, she understood the power of compound interest and investing in the market and stuff like that. And you said it stopped in '08, which for those listeners who do not know, '08 was a huge crash, whether it was the stock market, real estate, job market. It was a whole lot going on. Did it ever pick back up that you can recall?
Yeah, I think it picked back up a few years later, but I think people like in our parents' generation, when they were actually going through it live and they were impacted like directly financially, it did kind of set them back like in their mindset a little bit because it freaked them out. Like that was like one of the first biggest or the biggest crashes in their lifetime.
Mhm.
So it was something that I think even people like my mom were afraid to get back into until after a few years after the fact.
Gotcha. And I love that you bring that up because I was just talking, I had another interview and we were talking about, everybody is an expert in investing until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Until the market takes a dip or there's a recession, or we saw it during March of 2020 with the coronavirus dip. I mean, everybody was like, don't catch a falling knife and dead cat bounce and wait for it to hit the bottom to buy in. And the same people who were preaching that stuff ended up missing the bull that came after. And even today, now I don't really watch the market on a daily basis, honestly, but it seems like we're in a dip right now. I heard crypto's going down, stocks are going down. So we're seeing the same thing.
Right,
So
exactly.
we could look at today and see, okay, how are people responding to it?
Mhm.
And so that's super great. And then you mentioned that you went to college. What was your degree in?
I studied business information technology. So it was a mix of like business management classes and accounting and finance, as well as computer programming as well. So it was a very, I guess, well-versed major.
Mhm.
So I've been able to kind of utilize that skill set in my career today.
Which is
So I work within fintech. I'm a product owner right now, so I get to work from the business strategy side as well as be able to work with a bunch of technical people and try to understand their side and just be the liaison between the two.
gotcha. And so how did you end up financing college? Was there student loan debt, or were you fortunate that your parents paid for scholarships, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so my parents paid for a portion of my tuition, but not all of it. So I did have student loans. I also did graduate a semester early from college, which saved me a lot of money. It saved me thousands of dollars, but I think I left college with about $25,000 in student loans.
Okay, and I mean, looking at the climate we're in today, I guess $25,000 isn't really as severe as it could be.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I do want to. I love that you brought that up. Early graduation,
Mhm.
because a lot of people have the opportunity to end up graduating early, whether it's a semester or even a year early,
Mhm.
and they don't understand. Not only are you saving in the tuition costs, but you're starting your career a semester early. That's 6 months worth of wages or a year
Yeah.
worth of wages. That when you add all that together, it can end up being it could end up being six figures depending on your salary and stuff like that. So I do always encourage people to graduate early. Yes, I understand senior year, you're the big dog, you're top of the top and you want to stick around that, but you have to understand what you're trading off for that, which is you're paying
Exactly.
more tuition, you're paying more, you're missing out on missed wages. And
Mhm.
so I think that's really awesome. So at what point, it sounds like you were kind of raised with more financial literacy than the average person. So, was there a point in your finance journey that you felt like you didn't have control of your finances and it was time to take control? Or did you always kind of have a grasp on your financial situation?
Yeah, so I think there were a couple of instances where I realized I had to take control over my finances. Because again, I didn't know everything as an adult. I knew the basics, but I didn't know it all. So I kind of had to learn for myself. And I think my first instance was when I think I was about 20, and I was with my previous partner at the time, and I was buying him a gift. And when I get to the cash register, they were like, "Oh, would you like to open a store credit card with us? You'll get a discount today if you do." And I was like, oh, yeah, for sure. Like I literally said yes without hesitation. So I wrote down my social security number, my address, all of that to apply for this card. Well, a few months go by and I'm casually going through my bank account and I saw an option to look at my credit score for free. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And it was something like 550 or maybe even slightly higher, like 575. And I immediately go to Google to see if that was a good credit score. And I quickly realized it was not. So I went to my mom and I'm like, what does your credit score even mean? Like Google is telling me that mine's awful. So she explained it to me and we're both trying to dig through to see why it was so bad. And eventually we find out that it was from a store where I opened up that credit card and I had a bunch of late payments. So I
Mm.
was like, oh my God, like one, I never received that card. And two, I never received like a phone call or any bills or anything from them. So I immediately jump on the phone and I'm talking to a representative of that store. And I'm like, yeah, this stuff happened. Like, what do I do? Like, what the heck? So they were like, oh yeah, we should have sent the card out. It was sent to such and such address, which it was the correct address. And I was like, no, I most certainly did not receive anything. So I started negotiating without realizing I was negotiating. I was like, yeah, I can pay the initial amount that I owed you right now, but can you waive all the late fees since I never got anything to my address? So they were able to do that. And then I was like, okay, so what are you guys going to do about my credit score? And they were like, oh, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do about that. So that was the end of that. From there, I was like frantically researching for days on how to like increase your credit score, how to get a good credit score. But I think literally by the grace of God, a few days later, I got something in the mail from that store saying that they were going to remove all of the negative impacts on my credit score from them. And then from there, my score skyrocketed to the 700s. So after that instance, I remember becoming obsessed with my credit score and credit cards and making sure that I'm making good financial decisions. And it kind of just went from there.
Okay, so really, you kind of stumbled into it where you look at
Yeah.
your credit score, you're like,
I learned the hard way.
yeah. And that's why I always suggest people, even if you don't have the best credit, you still need to be monitoring it. You need to understand who's reporting what, who you owe money to, because just like your situation, you opened up a credit card, you saved a little bit of money that day, and then you completely forgot about it. You left the store, you never received any reminders, and it came back to bite you. So I mean, I count it as a blessing because it brought to attention something that you had no idea about. So when you went to your mom, did she also kind of give you the rundown of why good credit is important and the things you can do with good credit? Or did you just know, like, this is bad, it needs to be good, and that's it? Like,
Yeah, going into that conversation with my mom, I had no context. I was like, Google was telling me this is bad. Like, what do I do? Like, what is it? How does this even impact me? And she was telling me the impacts, like, yeah, like you get like lower interest rates with it. Like, you can do X, Y, and Z. Like she was like, basically going through all the benefits of having a good credit score. And she was explaining it to me as well. She's like, yeah, when you're younger, you typically have like a lower credit score because you haven't like built up that experience with your credit. But she's like, yeah, 550 looks a little bit low. So let's figure this out and try to dig through like why it is as bad as it is.
mhm. Yeah, and it kind of it waves a question. It's like your mom seems very, very educated when it comes to things like credit score, finance, interest rates, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I wonder why she didn't like sit you down and say, "Hey, look, this is something you're going to encounter. So let's
Mm.
plan before." I don't know, because finance can be a taboo topic in some households, but it doesn't seem like it was that taboo in yours.
Yeah.
So,
My mom, so she tried to teach me everything that she could. Like, I think parents, they bring their kids up thinking that like they're going to make their kid like 100% perfect. They're going to know everything going to college. But then I think, we're human beings and sometimes it just slips our mind. Like she taught me about investing, but she didn't think to also teach me about credit scores. Like it's just
mhm.
something that there's not like a granular list of like, yeah, I need to teach my kid X, Y, and Z in order for them to get through life. And I think also it's important too, because I think you learn through your own experiences as well. If you have someone like holding your hand throughout life, you're not going to really learn anything. But if you kind of like jump in and you learn for yourself, either the hard way or the easy way, I think it's way more impactful over you.
Yeah, and I also think children retain what they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, but a little score that means nothing to you for the next 6 years, you don't really care about that, especially at least as a child. Like you care about video games or your items or things like that. So, and I guess but that also relates to everything, such as saving for retirement. Like, why do it early? That's
Right.
something that I need to worry about down the road. Credit scores, why worry about that when it doesn't even matter to me?
Right.
So maybe she did try, and you were just like,
Yeah.
nah, nah, like
Teenage Imani probably was just like, okay, like I don't care, like whatever.
exactly.
It just
Because
went over my head.
I say that because that was me in high school. Like I didn't care about anything that didn't benefit me at the time. Like it was just okay. So you talked about negotiating your credit card down, which is an amazing tip for people. Like everybody thinks, okay, you're just stuck with whatever amount it is. No, you can negotiate with people, especially in certain circumstances. We're all human. And so you're talking to a human on the other end. Some of them are more forgiving than others. And some of them have more power than others. So that's a great tip to give the people. Were there any other steps besides increasing your credit score at the time that you took, any education you went through in order to start gaining control of your finances?
Yeah. So I became obsessed with making sure I was paying off my credit card on time each month, but also I started getting into budgeting. And the budgeting piece happened right after I graduated from college. I had all these student loans. And from my credit card experience, I thought that all debt was bad debt. Like I thought student loans, like you shouldn't have student loan debt, like all this stuff. And I learned later on that, there's such thing as good and bad debt. And fortunately, student loans do fall in the good category. But I literally wasn't paying rent when I first graduated from college because I was fortunate enough to live with my parents for the first year out of college while working. But I just threw every dime and penny into my student loans. I would literally budget out. I can't remember the exact allocation, but I think I created a budget where my discretionary was 30% of my paycheck and my student loans were like 70%. So I wasn't saving or investing anything. And there was a lot of mixed emotions with that approach for me because one, I was able to pay off my student loans in a year and a half, which was awesome. But because I didn't know that much about, the benefits of investing while paying off loans, I realized I lost out on a lot of gains because I wasn't investing in the stock market. Instead, I was super hyper focused on paying down the low interest debt. And if I were able to go back in time, I would have paid just over the minimum and invest the rest. But after I paid everything off, I think I was about 22 at the time, I started researching and about budgeting, and I started doing all these like learnings about it, and it kind of just got me to where I am today. So now I invest 60% of my income because I try to keep my expenses low through like negotiating. Like I negotiated my current rent that I'm paying and like my pet rent, all this stuff. And I also allocate 20% of my income towards my expenses, and then the last 20% towards discretionary.
Okay. So you just threw a lot. So let's go back through this. So year and a half to kill $25,000 in student loans. That's great. That's like what, $1,300 a month going straight towards student loans. That's amazing. And even though I guess it's not you mentioned that it's not the most efficient way to do it, paying off your student loans. Let's look at the alternatives on what you could have done. That could have been going to a car payment. That could have been going to nicer things. There are much more negative things that you could have done with that excess money than to pay off student loans. So I wouldn't beat yourself up over too much of that, especially being so young at the time. Like you're not 45 doing it. Your time horizon is much wider. Also, you mentioned you're saving 60% of your income.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to most people impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep mentioning a budget, which I think is the absolute most important piece of it. You cannot do anything financially without at least tracking your expenses in some way, shape, or form. So can you dig a little bit more deeper into that? Like, how do you carve out 60% of your earnings and save it? Like,
yeah. So I think the main thing for me is lowering your expenses as much as possible. So all the time I try to evaluate like my monthly subscriptions that I have, like with like Netflix, Hulu, like all these different things to see if I'm actually like using them to their actual value. And then another thing is, I negotiate all of my things. Like I negotiate my rent, my pet rent, my monthly garage fees for my apartment, all these different things. So I really try to focus on lowering my expenses. But there also comes a time where you can't lower your expenses but so much. Mm-hmm. So I think my next step was to increase my salary. I got a new job after my first year at my first company that I was working for, and I negotiated my salary there. Even, with my initial offer and after I got there, I negotiated my salary. So I think it's really just about, one, tracking your expenses, but also lowering and to the point where it's feasible. And then from there, focusing on increasing your income, whether that's through your actual salary or if that's like through side hustles.
Yeah, God, I love that. I love that so much. So a couple things you said. First of all, you said, okay, so you live on 20% of your income. Let's start right there. That mm-hmm. seems impossible for many people. Mm-hmm. It wasn't always 20%.
Right.
Sometimes at one point it might have been 100%, then it was 80% as your salary increased and your expenses decreased. You didn't just start at 20%. So right. Let's start there. I love to bring it back to my personal situation because I do like to target people in the military because I was in the military. When I was let's just say a private first class, it was a lower ranking enlisted. I had a budget, and as I got promoted, my budget stayed exactly the same. So every pay bump I got, it was just more into savings. So that
Mhm.
percentage gap tended to stretch apart. And what you see a lot with, and it's not only military people, it's just people in general, when they get the raise, now they got to get the better car. Now they got to get the bigger house. Now they got to get the better furniture, more TVs, and all this stuff. So, how did you navigate not trying to keep up with the Joneses? Because,
Right.
like, for me, I don't do this, but in my mind, I kind of do it. It's like if I pull up to someone and they have a Ferrari, I instantly think like that's a nice car, but that's not a nice car payment. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a car payment or not, but that's just the instant that I get out of that like, okay, I don't even know if he owns that or not. So how did
Right.
you navigate not keeping up with the Joneses and kind of flexing your bank account without flexing your bank account because
Yeah.
you value saving more than items?
Yeah. I try to avoid lifestyle inflation as much as possible. And I think for me, I think honestly, a lot of it came from my very frugal personality. I don't know why, but I've always been a naturally frugal person. I'm always trying to get like the best deals and all these different things. And even to me, with my current salary, I think paying, $2,000 by yourself for a one bedroom apartment is ridiculous. Like I would never do that. I don't care how much money I'm making. I would just never do that. So I think it's just trying to be reasonable and also think like you should think about your long-term goals as well. Like for me, my goal is to retire early, and I won't be able to retire as early as I can if I'm paying double my current rent right now. So I think it's just like thinking about your long-term goals, at least making them and taking steps to actually achieve that. And also like don't buy things just because they're trends. I think that's something that a lot of people do. They buy the trendiest clothes, the trendiest cars. And I think those are the money suckers right there. I think trying to avoid all those trendsetters as much as possible, get things that, they're going to last you a long time, things that you actually genuinely enjoy and things that are priceless, or even invest in things that are experiences. That's personally what I like to do as well. So I just avoid lifestyle inflation as much as humanly possible.
So when you say experiences, you mean things like traveling
Mhm.
or going on vacations and creating the memories rather than having materialistic things.
Right, exactly. I have a whole sinking fund just for traveling. So, I'll build it out and I'll put a certain amount in my paycheck into there every month. And then when I feel like I have enough, I just stop allocating towards it. But then when I go on vacation, I'm depleting it, and then I just add more into it later on. So it's just kind of a cycle because that's something that I do value in my life. I do value traveling. I think people should really focus their money on their long-term goals as well as things that they're actually really passionate about, because we're human beings. We are not placed on this earth just to like make money only for us to retire like 59, 65 years old. We also have to enjoy our life today. We're in our early to mid 20s. We need to actually enjoy things that we're passionate about, which from my personal experience, those are just experiences and being able to travel.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to the saying you mentioned earlier, money doesn't buy happiness. When I hear that saying, I instantly think of materialistic things like buying items doesn't give you happiness, which I agree with, but I disagree with the point like money can buy you experiences. Money can take you to other countries, meet other people, and do the things that actually can bring you happiness. So
Mhm.
that's where I kind of, I juggle that saying a lot. And it all depends on what you value in life. Like you said, you value experiences. Some other people may value materials, which there's nothing wrong with. But I think there has to be a limit on both. Like
Yes.
there has to be like you can't spend all of your money creating experiences and you can't
Right.
spend all of your money buying materials. There has to be a balance somewhere.
Yeah. And I would say too, like, say for instance, your passion are like high heels. Like, you're obsessed over high heels. You have to buy the latest high heels. I would say create a sinking fund. Like create a
Mhm.
sinking fund for those high heels. If it's something that you truly enjoy, put out like, I don't know, maybe $25 every single month or $50 every single month into a sinking fund. That way you can be able to, allocate money towards that passion.
Mhm. So, I mean, you have a lot of percentages. You have 60% savings, 20% into living, and 20% into
Discretionary.
discretionary. So, do you also suggest other people kind of stick with that 20% into discretionary? Compared, like, maybe not exactly 20%, but for example, I have a saying like you should have less than 10% of your net worth in luxuries, things like cars or boats or anything that just is a luxury. So, like, do you have a certain percentage? And I also say, like, you should always invest at least, for example, if you save $1,000, you should not be spending more than $1,000 on luxuries. So, do
Right.
you have something like that that you'd like to give people advice for, or?
I think I think a good starting point, if at all possible, is that people follow the 50-30-20 rule where they
Mhm.
allocate a certain amount. Like I think it's like 50% into your savings and investments. I have to take a look at the allocation, but I would suggest people follow that rule um, as a start. But if that's not something that they can do because their expenses are too high and they're not making enough income, I would say do something as low as like $25 into your investments or into your savings and pay those fixed expenses that you have no control over. Pay those off first because I guess that's, or no, you should pay yourself first. Pay off, pay $25 to yourself. And then
Mhm.
after that, pay off your fixed expenses. So I think it really just depends on, your income. And that's why I always say, like, you can't really lower your expenses but so much, but you always have an opportunity to increase your salary.
So you think that's where most people should focus their the blunt of their attention is getting skills or getting knowledge to increase their salary.
Yep. That and also negotiating. Like
Mhm.
definitely negotiate for sure, even within your current role.
Gotcha. So you put out, like I said in the beginning podcast, you put out a lot of entertaining content on your reels, your Instagram, and things like that. Where do you turn for your educational material when it comes to finances? Because there's so many gurus out there, the guys with the Lambos, the guys that take this course and you'll become a millionaire in 90 days and things like that. So it's like, where do you get your educational content, and how do you um, develop a trust with the content that they're putting out?
Yeah. So I think initially when I was first starting out, like right after college, or during college, right after college, I think I was just reading random articles online. And then eventually, funny enough, I started learning things from Reddit. There's this subreddit called like personal finance, and I literally will like read through dozens and dozens of posts per day just to try to absorb as much as I could. Even today, I like to check out and learn from that subreddit. And in the past, I would ask questions myself onto that subreddit. So I learned a lot through there. And then later on, I think early in 2021, I started to follow a bunch of personal finance accounts on Instagram, and they would always suggest these books to read. So I started to read books like I Will Teach You to Be Rich and Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I started chatting with my friends more often about finance and my boyfriend today about finance, and just to learn from one another. So I didn't just take like a one route to learn. I try to expand my horizons as much as possible. And some things that I realized that were, a get rich quick kind of scheme, or honestly, some of the subreddits on Reddit today, such as like Wall Street bets, for example, I try to avoid those as much as possible and stay on the side of Reddit where they encourage you to hold things long term, such as index funds. And, even when there are really low dips in the market, we kind of hold each other's hands and hold each other accountable to, hold long term and not sell low.
Gotcha. And by the way, guys, she mentioned two books, great books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I will link those in the show notes below if you guys want to buy them and take a look. And I love that you said that you don't, you take in all of the content, whether you believe it or not, and then you make your own choices on what you're actually gonna go with. Because I use two extremes, for example. I do listen to some of Grant Cardone's content, which is he's like a leverage everything, cash is trash,
Mm.
a very extreme agenda on one side. But I also listen to people like Dave Ramsey, who debt is dumb, cash is king. and pay cash for everything. And I listen to his material and then I find that middle ground. I find some value over here and I find some value here, and then I make choices on my own. I think anytime someone goes all in on one message and they don't decipher and pick out what's best for them that they will actually stick to, I think that's what keeps people in sort of a non-progressive state. Because if you go to Dave Ramsey and you never borrow money again and you pay cash for everything, that does not work for everybody. It can, but it doesn't. People don't follow it. People don't enact on it, whatever. And it's the same thing with Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone, I think he will probably cause the most bankruptcies in the country if you just follow him directly and you take all of his words literally. There's a high chance you will go bankrupt because it's super risky, or you will become a billionaire. Like there's no in between.
And that's why they call it personal finance. Like personal finance is 90% personal, 10% finance. Like you should find a strategy that works for you and your personal situation. So even if that means taking tidbits from like, X, Y, and Z and tidbits from A, B, and C, you can do a mixture of the two just to see like what works best for your personal situation.
I love that you said that. Personal finance is personal, and anybody who has a cookie cutter, anyone can do it, approach. I can almost guarantee that's how I know you're a guru, is if anybody can do it, you're a guru, because we know not everybody can do everything.
Right.
So, and I say all of that to bring it back to this podcast. Like I might say some things that don't align with other people's, the way they should do things. I just bring on people and I figure out what worked for them, what worked for you. And maybe you might connect to one person or they might listen to my story and they say, man, I might connect with him. And that's what this podcast is about, is taking all these different stories, even though you did it completely different than I did, figuring out what you did that worked for me, what I did, and bringing it all together and giving all of the, different opinions. So, and I want to get a little bit specific because, okay, we're both Black, and it is what it is. As a Black woman, do you ever feel ostracized by either family members or friends by talking so much about finances? Like, because it's a taboo topic, especially at least in my household, it was extremely taboo. It might not have been for your household, but like, what have been your experiences?
Yeah, I definitely have, especially in the past. Luckily, not so much today, because my highest priority in my life is to surround myself with positive people. And many times I feel like, my boyfriend today, my friends and family are some of my strongest support systems. So I feel fortunate enough that I'm comfortable enough today to be able to ask questions and give advice, or just to talk about our salaries or how to negotiate our salaries or whatever. But with that said, I did have some people in my life in the past who have said some nice, some not so pretty things to me. For instance, like my previous partner, he was white and he had graduated with his master's degree. I had graduated with my bachelor's degree, and money was a very, very taboo topic for us. And, when we both started working from our first time, started working our first jobs at a college, I was making more money than him by about 10K. And I kind of just had a sense of how he was. So I avoided telling him my salary until one day he kept pushing and pushing and pushing and was like, why are you hiding your salary from me? Like, you should feel comfortable telling me. So I told him. And instead of being happy for me and supporting me, he got upset and his whole mood changes. He said some pretty awful things to me about it. And I think the one statement that really stuck with me the most was when he said, I'd rather date a school teacher than date a woman who makes more money than me. And I remember that angering me so much. I was like, what's wrong with school teachers? There's nothing wrong with school teachers. They're so incredibly underpaid for all the work that they're doing today. But also I was like, he would think it's not appropriate for a woman to make more money than his partner. Like, that's awful. And also the fact that it was coming from him out of all people. So I remember I have conversations with him when I was reading articles about wealth building in the Black community, and how it's a lot harder for someone who, is Black, because we have so many obstacles that are out of our control. And he would always respond by, saying something snarky like, well, obviously that's not a problem since you're making more money than me. So I think, I was like, you should not just use me or what you think of me as a representative of what's happening to millions of other Black people in this country or even in this world. And I have to work 10 times as hard as you do to even get my foot through a door. So it definitely was a struggle. And again, that's why I prioritize only surrounding myself around positive people. I know people like him are no longer in my life, and I don't plan to, invite that kind of negativity into my life ever again.
Yeah, that sucks, but I guess it's kind of a learning experience, because I will say it is typical for the man to make more than the woman. At least let's just talk in history. Men have historically made more. So I guess when you do, and I will preface this by saying my wife makes more money than me. I don't care. Okay, she makes more money at her job than I make at my job. I don't care. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a sugar baby. No, but with that being said, that really all it sounds like is ego talking. I mean, and maybe it might not be just because you're a woman, because he had a master's and you had a bachelor's. So I guess you could look at that from a third eye and say, oh, well, automatically, if you have more education than someone, you're going to make more than them. Well, we know realistically that's not true. There are people with just simple certificates and certifications that make more than people with bachelor's, master's, and even doctorates. So that's the world we live in nowadays, where your education level does not automatically equate to how much you'll earn. And you're living proof of that. And I do love how I say it every podcast, I'm going to say it again. Your network is your net worth. The people you surround yourself with, you're going to end up being them. So if you surround yourself with people who don't like to talk about money, they like to buy flashy things, that's who you're going to end up becoming.
Right.
So it's super duper important for all the listeners and even myself to surround yourself with people. I like to surround myself with people who are where I want to be, not people on my level. I don't have anything against people on my level, but I want to surround by people who are where I want to be. So it'll help me strive to get there. But I asked that question because I had a super weird encounter the other day, and it was just super duper weird because it was just a post about someone having a car payment, like an $800 car payment, blah blah blah, and then there was a person who sells cars. He's like, yeah, well, the people around me have $1,200 car payments. And I came in there, I didn't come in there trying to be offensive or anything, but I just came in there. I was like, man, imagine putting $1,200 into an investment account. Like imagine what that would grow to.
Right.
And then it was an African-American man, same as me. He was mixed, same as me. And he's like, yeah, well, everybody doesn't need to save for retirement. And I was like, yeah, the same face you did, you sure about that? He's like, yeah, if you make enough money, you don't have to invest. And I'm like, are you? And then I'm not gonna lie, I can be very short-tempered sometimes. And I was just like, okay, but you don't make enough money to never have to invest. And I was very blunt. And I guess that might have been bad on me, but it's a fact.
Right.
I don't know anyone in real life that makes so much money that they don't have to invest.
Right.
Because as soon as you stop working, your income stops. So you need money working for you. And
exactly.
Yeah, we just went back and forth. And I'm just like, look, man, if you have this mentality, it really sucks. You're surrounding yourself with managers. He was like, my managers make $50K a month, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but that's not you. You have to make a plan. And he called me stop pocket watching.
Wow.
And yeah. I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, first of all, I do this for a living. I literally talk finances for a living. And then they called investing white people stuff. So I was like, that's when I was like, you know what? Maybe this conversation isn't going to go anywhere. And so that's why I bring it up. Cause I really want to see Black people be successful, because it is harder for us. It's not impossible. It is harder. With that being said, I want to see all Black people be successful. But when money is so taboo, and when you say things like that's white people stuff, my instant thing, which I told my wife, I'm like, success doesn't have a color.
Right.
And that's why I preface the question, because I want to see how you get around it, because I haven't been able to get around it for the most part yet, except
Yeah.
with people who are like-minded like us.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's too, like, we need to have more role models. There are so many white males that are in, the finance industry, or they're into investing, but there's not enough Black people that are role models. Like, we need more role models. That's what I want to be a role model for people. And I assume like you want to be a role model for people as well. And I think we should definitely start them young, like when they're like 5 years old, teach them like how about saving and investing and all that stuff. But also we have to, like, we're all adults, like we have to take the initiative and help each other and teach each other and put each other up about personal finance and on how to invest. And that retiring is important, like saving for your retirement is important, even though you feel like it's not important today, it's definitely going to be important 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. And you can just look at the people who are there, who are
Mm-hmm.
at the retirement age, and all of them say the exact same thing. I wish I would have started when I was your age. There has not been a time, and I say this very boldly, there's never been a time where I talked to someone who was facing retirement age and they just weren't there with their number financially. They always say, I wish I would have started at your age. So
Yeah.
now I'm my age and I'm telling people my age, like, listen, these are what the old people are telling us. They're telling us
Yeah.
start early, start compound interest is on your side. Stop trying to impress people, because no one is going to pay for your stuff in retirement. The same
Right.
people who envy you over you driving a nice BMW, they're not going to care when y'all are in the same nursing home, except their bills are paid and yours aren't.
Right.
So that's why, like, I think it's so important I think it's a lot easier for us to hold our peers accountable than it is for the older generation to hold us accountable, because we just don't hear it. That's
Yep.
just my opinion. I mean, but that's why I really admire the things you're doing, because not only like we have different teaching methods. Like, I'm not that funny, and so I'm not that creative. So like you create these like your reels and your posts to entice the younger generation, and
Mhm.
it's obviously working, and it starts the conversation.
Right.
And as soon
Right.
as you start the conversation, as soon as you break that barrier, like when you shock somebody's system, and I'd be like, look, you can be a millionaire, and they're like, no, I can't. Yes, you can. And then you come in like doing all
Yeah.
your dancing and stuff. They're like, wait a minute, like I'm gonna look into this. And so even though we a lot of us have the same message, the way we express it is different, and it catches different people different ways.
Hmm.
That's why I really love what you do. And of course, guys, I'm going to link all this stuff in the description, her Instagram, TikTok, and whatever else we got.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
I
I'm
try to keep
rambling.
it fun. Like I try to keep it
Mhm.
fun because finance can be such a boring topic. Money can be such a boring topic. So I want to keep it fun for people and like really grasp their attention and keep their attention. And I think too, like one of my friends, for instance, she's a teacher and she teaches high school students. And she's like, yeah, I tell my students all the time to go follow your Instagram. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like that's so
Mhm.
cool. Cause I want to start them young so that, like I didn't start investing until my early 20s, but I could have been like even better off if I had started investing when I was like 16 or 17 years old. So I think it's so great to start them young for sure.
Mhm. Especially before they go to college, before they get that keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
Yes,
Like, you have to
exactly.
catch them before that, because once they're in it, it's so much harder to reset after that. After you
Mhm.
went out and bought the nice car, or bought all the nice things, ran out the credit card. Now you have to basically fix all your past mistakes before you can actually start growing.
Right,
So it's best to catch them right there before they make all their mistakes, before
right.
they make $100,000 student loans and all that bad stuff.
Yep.
So, Imani, let me ask you this. All successful people set goals. What are some of your short-term goals to accomplish within the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, so it's very intimidating for me, but my short-term goal is to get into real estate investing. It's something that I never considered before, like, for most of my life, because I feel like real estate's a very high risk type thing. And like what I mentioned before, I'm a very frugal person.
Mm,
But I started considering it late last year, actually. And since then, I've been able to like network with a number of people regarding real estate investing. And I've read so many books and have put endless amount of hours into researching, real estate investing. And it's kind of funny because one of the things I learned through, the books that I've been reading is tell everyone you're interested in real estate investing, because you don't know who you'll meet. You don't know like what advice they'll give you. Like they may give you some life-changing advice that you would have never even thought about. So that is definitely a goal of mine. Initially it was, getting into like the BRRRR method, where you buy a house, you renovate it, you rent it out, refinance and repeat. But I think it may not, I think, again, I'm kind of like a risk adverse person. So it seems a little bit intimidating for me. So instead I'm thinking of, starting out with, short-term or long-term rentals, do short-term through like Airbnb, for instance, but we'll see.
Imani, I love me some real estate, man. I tell you that. I just got my 1099 for my property manager. I'm like,
oh, nice.
man, I'm like, oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
So let me ask you this. Why real estate? What is it about real estate that you think would make better off than other investing strategies?
Yeah, I think it's one, like something where it's just completely out of my comfort zone, and I want to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. Like, yeah, you can make a ton of money off of just investing through like index funds and making 10% returns every year, but your returns can be astronomical if you start investing into real estate and you have multiple properties. Like you can make even like way more than that 10%, even, and if you do it right too, because there's a lot of risk into it. There's a lot of mistakes that you can make. There's a lot of learnings that you're gonna have to go through along the way. So I think I just want to change up my investment portfolio a little bit into like higher risk type things, and hopefully make great returns out of it in the long run.
Gotcha. It is more risky, but the way I see it, you have no control over what Apple does tomorrow. You have no control over what Facebook does tomorrow. Right. You can control what you do with your property once you buy it, as long as, of course, stay away from HOAs. But like you have so much more control over real estate, which is why I did it. I love the income today compared to, and I'll just go ahead. I'm going on the rant a lot, and I apologize.
Yeah, you're fine.
There's a dilemma that I was facing earlier last week. With my current job and the retirement and stuff like that. And I'm basically deliberating whether I should keep going full-fledged into real estate or go like half real estate, half retirement. And somebody said something like, I posted in my Facebook group to get a little bit of feedback, and somebody said something so profound. He was like, the only thing constraining you in this argument is your income. So which one increases your income? And I was like, that makes sense. Like if I had enough income, I could do 100% of both, but I don't. Therefore, which one increases my income? The retirement doesn't increase my income today. The real estate does. And so that's how I kind of ended up making that decision. Like, okay, he's right. Once I increase my income, once I have more rentals and I have more income coming in, then I can do 100% of both.
Right.
I still do retirement 100%. I do. I still do my Roth IRA and stuff like that. But the excess money, girl, I love me some real estate, man.
I know. It's been like a whole new world for me after I started learning about it. Like I feel like when I first started learning about investing, like a few years back, I was like, this is a whole new world. And now I know enough, but real estate investing is just like a whole new tier. Like I'm going to go full force into it.
Yeah, you should. There's plenty of good people out there. There's plenty of good content out there to get you through it, like Bigger Pockets.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my go-to. And guys, I will link Bigger Pockets. I link Bigger Pockets in like every episode, but I'm gonna link them below because I'm telling you, they got some amazing content. They got like 4 podcasts, 5 podcasts, bunch of books, crazy amount of real estate knowledge. That's where I get all mine from. Okay, with that being said, so what are some of your long-term financial goals to accomplish within the next 5 to 10 years? What does the finish line look like for you, Imani?
I think I would love to achieve financial independence, meaning like I'm work optional. Like I don't have to work a job to get by. All my money that I started investing from my early 20s and plus is making passive income for me. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 35. And I want to have like a net worth of $1 million and be work optional. And because of my passive income, I'm obtaining through like real estate or any other side hustles I decide to pick up by then. And I just want to have time to do things that I want to do. And I don't want to have to focus on things that I have to do because I'm restrained by the amount of money that I have at that time.
So when there's people that say, because There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a millionaire. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a billionaire. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be a trillionaire. I had a guy on the podcast. He said he's striving for $1 billion. I 100%, I applaud him. And a lot of people don't see the journey it takes to become a millionaire or to become a billionaire. So for those people who think millionaires are these evil, selfish people who just take advantage of people, like, how do you respond to that, knowing what you know and what it's going to take, all the sacrifices and all that? How do you respond to those people who are going to look down on you because you have such a high net worth?
Yeah, I think they should realize that it takes work in the beginning. Like, you have to sacrifice your own time. You have to sacrifice, being able to afford like a $50,000 monthly mortgage. You have to sacrifice all these different things in order to become a millionaire. You have to have, financial intelligence and be able to track your expenses and do X, Y, and Z, increase your salary. It takes work in the beginning in order for you to actually have wealth in the long run, or like, years down the road. And I think too, like, there's a lot of millionaires out there who, like to flaunt it. They like to buy like Teslas and BMWs and Mercedes and all that. But then there's a lot of other like millionaires who are very humble. They have like Honda CR-Vs. Like, I have a Honda CR-V and I love my Honda. They're very humble. They don't flaunt it. They don't like use it to like take advantage of people. I think that's the main difference. And it makes me sad that like they would assume that all millionaires are bad people. Like, no, it's people, a lot of them are people who actually put in time and effort in the beginning. And it's also like they're not making that money off of taking advantage of people. They're making their money with their hard-earned money that they started making from, early on when they're in their 20s.
Yeah. I think one thing that you'll encounter when you get into real estate is, those dirty slum lords. I called him to change my light bulb and he hasn't been here in 3 days. He's a slum lord. I mean, and I see it so often, of course, outside the real estate groups and stuff like that. There are people who, I can't believe rent is so high. These landlords taking advantage of people. I guess what they don't realize is, like, when the refrigerator breaks, I'm going to replace it. When the roof goes out, I'm going to replace it. When you put a hole in the wall, because I don't want it to be, I can't think of the word right now, but I don't want it to get worse, I'm going to fix it. All of that comes with you paying me a little bit more than my mortgage. And I guess when you experience things like slumlords who don't fix anything, who have just like the bare minimum to get you into a property and just forget about you, then of course you'll have that opinion. But that's not everybody.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying that to say you're ever going to be a slumlord or whatever. I'm sure you're going to take care of people, but there are people out there. Like, I make sure my tenants are happy. My property managers, they make sure our tenants are happy because they are the asset, not the building.
Exactly.
So, and not all landlords are evil. Not all millionaires are evil. Some of them get rich by making other people rich. Like Jeff Bezos, he had a quote. He said, Amazon is worth $1 trillion. He owns $160 billion worth of Amazon. What does that mean? That means he made $840 billion for other people. So like, he created more wealth for others than he did himself. And that really had me reevaluating, like, it's true. Like, he didn't make his billions just taking advantage of people, coming to their house, robbing them. He provided a service, he provided convenience, and he made other people tons of money also.
Yeah.
So I hope that really helps our listeners. I mean, I don't think our listeners think millionaires are evil, but maybe they know someone who thinks millionaires.
Yeah.
You're going to be, as soon as you cross that millionaire mark, Imani, you're going to be evil. But I also like how with the internet nowadays, you're putting out all this content that's going to be around for years and years and years. So they're going to see where you came from. They're not just going to wake up one day and like, oh, Imani woke up a millionaire. It's like, no, she started here. She documented her journey, which is what this podcast is documenting my journey along my financial independence and getting to where you are. So I say all that to keep making the content, because that's what's going to be around when people are like, oh, she's so evil. She got paid for by these advertisers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, she created free content for you guys to motivate you. So
exactly. Yep.
But let's go ahead and transition into the final questions of the podcast, Imani. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So everyone has their own definition of what it means to have financial peace. What is your definition?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is necessarily like the traditional definition, but for me, I equate it to financial independence. I'd have a lot more time to do things that I want to do when I want to do it. I'd have enough passive income to, live the rest of my life without ever having to be employed. But even before achieving financial independence, I'd say peace is having enough money in your emergency fund where if you were to lose your job, you'd be okay for 3 to 6 months and not have to worry about, going deep into debt to pay off your bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. There's no wrong answer here. Financial peace, financial independence, they go hand in hand, and everybody finds it at a different spot in their journey. So your peace came from that emergency fund, which is awesome. But everybody has their own spot where they feel peace. Some feel peace when they are current on all their bills.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has their own. There's no wrong answers. So if there are listeners out there that want to start building wealth and they have no clue where to get started, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say read Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He breaks down the basics so well and gives you like actual tactical steps on how to get started on your financial journey. And he provides so many realistic tips on, how to build wealth. So I think reading his book literally changed my entire life around money. So I think it would do the same for any beginner as well.
Gotcha. And of course, guys, I will link Ramit's book in the show notes below. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Amazing book. Amazing book. I enjoyed it. So if there's one thing you could advise everyone to avoid doing to build wealth, what would it be?
I would say avoid paying attention to subreddits like I mentioned before, Wall Street Bets. That subreddit can provide so much dangerous advice that it could literally cause someone to lose their entire net worth. And, to be quite honest, I'll take a peek at it from time to time, like Wall Street Bets from time to time, just to be nosy, because I like to see what's going on. But I refuse to really take the advice or the tips there to heart.
Mm-hmm. And why is that? Like what? Like I get that you want to peek at it, but like why shouldn't people? Because obviously people have made money from doing the things. Yeah. Some people have made money
Some
from
people,
doing the
yeah.
things. Like so why shouldn't you just gamble? Like why not?
Yeah, I think a lot of those people are putting their entire portfolios into like one stock, which is so incredibly high risk. Like you can literally lose all of your money within like one day. I think, it's totally fine to, invest like 5% of your portfolio into like meme stocks or whatever. But I'm afraid of people being like, oh, well, this person made like $500,000 in one day. Like maybe if I just like put my entire, investment savings into that stock, I'll get the same thing. But by the next day, it completely turns around and lose everything. So I think it can be very dangerous. I think it's okay to look at for entertainment purposes, but I wouldn't follow their advice or their tips or even their strategies to heart.
Yeah, and I equate it because to me, it's gambling. And so I always like to relate it to a casino. Let's say you're going, so you and the girls, y'all are packing up, y'all are going to Vegas for 5 days. And you have this money. You say, I have $10,000 to gamble for this trip. Would you go in the casino the first night and put $10,000 on black?
Oh God.
If you lose, you have nothing for the next 5 days. So you're
Yeah.
just sitting there twiddling it. It's the same thing when you're putting all of your money into a single stock. If it busts, you are done. You need to go back to work. You need to start collecting money and making money again. Start gambling again if you want to try and make money. But at the end of the day, the risk versus the reward, I don't even put them on the same scale. So
right.
I love how you articulated that.
Gambling is terrifying for me personally. I get why it can be fun, but I also get why it can be very addicting. Because I went gambling one time and I think I went in with like $20. And within my first go, I made $200. And I was like, I'm done. I'm cashing out. I'm not, I don't want to lose this money. But like also there was temptation in me where I'm like, I kind of want to see if I can get more money, but I just knew if I kept going, I would have lost all my money. Like, so I cashed out.
Yeah, that's the most dangerous part is when you win. It
Mhm.
honestly is because you turn $20 into 200. You're like, oh, if I can do this again and turn 200 into 4, oh, if I can do this.
Yep.
When you win, that's the most dangerous part because you think
Yep.
it's repeatable.
Exactly.
And
When it's literally just luck.
literally, it's just luck. Okay. So, Imani, you're the first person I'm asking this new question to. I took the old question out about asking if you ask anybody dead or alive, and I replaced it with this because I think it's a lot more relatable. If there's someone out there that doesn't believe they can reach financial peace due to their age, race, religion, etc., what would you say to change their mind?
I would say invest $25 a month into an index fund and see where it goes from a year from now, and look at how much your gains have increased since then. I think if they were to see like their initial principal amount they invested and how much they gained a year later through compound interest, that would change their mind ASAP.
Mhm.
Because they would be like, okay, what if I put in $25? What would happen if I put $50 or $100 per month? Like they need to see like an actual visualization of how their money can grow through compound interest.
Yeah, I love that. But Imani, what if I can't afford $25 a month? What if I'm just living paycheck to paycheck and I can't afford $1 a day? Then what would you tell me?
I would say at that point, find a side hustle, sell some clothes, go on, these freelancer sites and sell your skill sets, find ways to increase your salary. That way, any extra money that you do have coming in, you can invest.
There it is. Increase the income. Because what a lot of people say that they cannot do, the limiting factor is they don't make enough. You can, if you're, even if you're working 80 hours a week, living paycheck to paycheck, of course, there's other things that you need to change, but you can always increase your income. I made a post saying this, but like everybody has a ability, a trait, or knowledge to sell for more than minimum wage. It's all about marketing that skill or that knowledge or whatever it is. Yep. So increase the income. I love it. And $25 a month. I said that facetiously because let's be honest, like we can all find $25 somewhere, whether it's in the couch cushions or I got to go wash my neighbor's car or whatever. Everybody
mow
can
a
find
lawn or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And oh, I'm too good to wash a car. Well, that you have to get out of that mentality first. Exactly. So all that to say, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. All right, Imani, we're wrapping up the show. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account called Mon-E with Mon-E, where I try to post a mix of images and fun reels all about finance, investing, money, financial independence. And people can also find me at my website, moneywithmoni.com.
Awesome, guys. And I will be linking both of those down in the show notes below. And there was one last thing I wanted to hit on, which I found on your Instagram, which is phenomenal. You offer a course. It's titled what they don't teach you in school, the basic guide to financial success. Obviously, it's probably like $100 a month or $200 a month, right? Like you're not going to just be teaching people this stuff for free, right?
Well, it's actually like a PDF where it's completely free. It's, I think, about 8 to 10 pages. And it really just like tries to dig deep into the basics of personal finance where people can talk about like, tracking your expenses, different saving methods, ways you can, I literally, show steps into ways you can increase your income through side hustles. So I try to dig in deep and it's like completely free. Anyone can download it for $0 and they'll have immediate access to it.
Exactly, guys. This is just another bit of free content people are putting out because success leaves breadcrumbs. So this is a completely free PDF. You guys can find it on her Instagram or on her website. You can download it. And even if you download it, you read it, and there's one thing you take from it that you can actually implement, I think that's a win. So, and I'll link that directly in the show notes also if you guys want to download it. But Imani, I really appreciate you taking the time out this early morning and recording this episode and bringing all this knowledge.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah, hopefully we can have you on within the next year or so and just see what's changed. I mean,
Yeah.
times are always changing. There's always the new fads and stuff like that. So we can always link back up, see what your net worth has done, see how you've grown, and if you've changed anything, if you've gotten that rental property finally. So definitely gonna hold you accountable to that. But with that further ado, guys, I am gonna catch you later, Imani.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye. And guys, that was my interview with Miss Imani. As I told you guys, she has a super duper relatable story. She went to college. She had student loan debt that she paid off. She has been putting out all these interesting reels and things like that to try and entice the younger generation, even younger than me, to start worrying about your finances early. Because if you can prevent yourself from having those mistakes early on, then you set yourself up to have a much smoother process in order to have a successful financial journey, which of course leaks into all your other parts of life, whether it's your marriage, fitness, or whatever. With that being said, guys, of course, I do always offer one-on-one coaching. You can schedule that down below in the show notes on my Calendly. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here, guys. Make sure you guys do check out Imani's Instagram, where she releases a bunch of nice content, and hit her up, man. Ask her any questions. I'm sure she's always willing to help someone out, especially someone who, is going to reciprocate the energy. But with that being said, guys, I'm your host, James Bowman. And always remember, you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Later, guys.